afternoon. Welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. We have an hour that will be filled with heck of a dialogue. We're going to talk to you about Ferguson. We're waiting now to see what the grand jury is going to come back with. I think across this country, people are waiting with bated breath because we don't know how this thing's going to go down. And we're all interested in finding out. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on down in Ferguson. We also want to talk today about President Obama. He gave a speech on immigration reform. He's going to enact an executive order. We're going to talk about what that actually means and what it means to have this type of order done in this country. I took it to Facebook. I wanted to know what my Facebook friends thought about these two topics, and a couple of people weighed in. And we're going to read their comments on the air to you today. But we want to also pay homage to a former Memphian, someone who was a native Mississippian, who was the great mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry, passed over the weekend, and we're going to pay tribute to him as well. Joining me today will be State Representative G.A. Hardaway, and he's going to help us dialogue with Deidre on today. You're watching Dialogue with Deidre. We'll be back in a moment.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed ours.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Did you know that every 34 seconds someone has a heart attack? Every 40 seconds someone has a stroke. But it doesn't have to be that way. Every day there's hope. Join me and the American Heart Association and get serious about your heart and your health. If you're doing nothing, do something. If you're doing something, do more. Find healthy living solutions from the American Heart Association's My Heart, My Life. It's that simple.
I'm Dominique Dawes. How do you start your day? I always start with a healthy breakfast. Whether you're practicing for a game or studying for a test, eating breakfast every day can improve your concentration and help you perform your best. Kids who eat a healthy breakfast have more energy to work hard and play hard. That's why you should check out your school's breakfast program. It's for everyone, so make sure you energize your day. Eat school breakfast.
Wow, tell around your drugstore, and your drugstore. Hey, we everyone's drugstore. And we're located at 3333 East Chevy Drive, 794-3690. All medical plans. We support supported living, assisted living. We do it all. And guess what? We even have a $4 plan. Hey, call and ask Dr. Brown about that. I gotta go because she's coming with those boots.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
NFC, AFC, offensive linemen, defensive tackles, quarterbacks, and cornerbacks are all living united. to ensure the academic success of millions of kids in our communities all the way to graduation day. But that won't happen without you. So take the pledge at unitedway.org. Make a difference in the life of a child. Suit up like your favorite NFL players and become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor with United Way.
And now let's take some questions from the public.
Mr. Chairman, why do we keep cutting back on education?
Governor, you want to take that question?
Mr. Chairman, let's give this one to the Senate Majority Leader.
Since this matter was taken up in AB 3712, I think it best if I defer to the Assembly Majority Leader.
Actually, pursuant to Department of Education statutes, the State Secretary of Education would be more qualified to answer. Mr. Secretary.
My legal team has advised me not to comment at this time, so I'll humbly refer to our State Superintendent of Schools.
Pass. Definitely pass. Okay, County Superintendent.
Well, young lady, it's just too complicated.
Can you tell me who's responsible for my education?
That is a good question. Governor?
Repeat the question, please.
I don't see why I can't get an answer from
You're asking a lot of difficult questions.
Well, she sure is.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the governor.
What is this?
Your 2 minutes are up.
Stop the circus. Contact your legislators at thisbudgetblows.com.
$7,000 high school students drop out every school day. That's a line of desks more than 4 miles long. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step.
Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. In the studio with me this afternoon is State Representative G.A. Hardaway. Representative Hardaway, welcome back to Dialogue with Deidre.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I had to think about it. I've been traveling.
I know.
What time zone am I in? So, but it's good to be back.
Good to be here.
If I'm here on Dialogue with Deidre, I'm at home.
You are at home. You're in the heart of Memphis. We lost a warrior for civil rights, Representative Hardaway, in someone who used to live right here in Memphis, Tennessee, grew up in one of the...
Itta Bena, Mississippi.
A native of Itta Bena, right?
Mm-hmm.
But didn't he grow up in South Memphis?
Yes, he did. Attended LeMoyne and Booker T. Washington graduate. I think that mantra is that we lead, others follow.
Exactly.
And I think he demonstrated it for a lifetime. If you can be mayor for life in Washington, D.C., then you're doing something. And that's about as much, as close as you're going to come to herding cats as anything else in life.
I mean, the capital of this great country. And so who we're talking about, viewers, we're talking about the former mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry, who succumbed to, and he passed away on last night at 78 years old.
78 full years.
Full years.
And it's ironic that we would have that type of warrior to come out of Memphis. You know, Memphis is known for that grit now.
Yeah.
And to have taken the leadership position in D.C. for those African Americans mostly, but poor people and those who are deprived of the benefits, social and economic benefits that are promised to us under the Constitution, in the shadow of the Capitol, in the shadow of the White House, that you have all these folk who have no representation in Congress. He was as much a congressman for them as he was a mayor, because he spoke on a national stage advocating and articulating the concerns of his people.
You know what I find interesting is that you and I talk about this a great deal, the foundation of any community turning itself around deals with education.
Education.
And then I'm reading that he started out politically on the school board.
Well, I think that sense of knowing that people need knowledge is what he took on into his executive positions as mayor, making sure that those contracts, you got to read those contracts and know what's in them.
Exactly.
And his sense of what people are due was demonstrated in his efforts to make sure that people of color in particular were included in the economic benefits that came with those city contracts, those district contracts.
When we were so fortunate enough to have the National Conference of Black elected officials here in Memphis, I had an opportunity to meet a young lady named Natalie Williams. And Natalie was former Mayor Marion Barry's spokesperson. She handled PR for him. And so as I read the Daily News' article on Marion Barry, of course, Natalie is still serving as
still writing.
Exactly, still serving as his spokesperson. And he's described as someone who was an advocate for poor people, those people who really need someone to advocate for them.
Well, I think the real strength that he had was the relationship back to his people, and then the ability to communicate with his people. When they call you mayor for life, it's because people are comfortable with you, who you are, and satisfied with the job you're doing. So that's two things that count. They like you, and they like what you're doing. And I think it speaks volumes for Memphis in knowing that he got his foundation here, working in the Memphis environment, so to speak, civil rights environment. I remember at one point he was quoted as saying that Dr. Hooks, Ben Hooks, was one of his mentors.
Really?
And it's amazing how that crosses generations. He was my mentor too. It kept me in line and made me a better statesman in Nashville, because they can get to be kind of aggravating up there.
Especially in this environment.
In this environment in particular. So I found that interesting, but it just gave you a sense of connection, not just to Marion Barry, but a number of people who have come out of this learning environment in Memphis.
When you think about, he was the son of a sharecropper. You know, a lot of us have a lot of our people who grew up in Mississippi picking cotton. So just to think, the son of a sharecropper working somebody else's land, grew up to be the mayor of one of the most powerful centers, well, the power center of this country.
The power center for the nation and thus
for this
the
country.
world.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to think about. What do you think his legacy is going to be? I'm going to tell you that I think, and I'm appalled, quite frankly, at the fact that when you look at the newspapers today, when you look at the news broadcast today, they want to paint him with a brush of a man who made a mistake and define him by the crack pipe in the hotel room.
Yeah, a life of service defined by one moment of indiscretion.
Exactly.
And I would say to you, and I'll say to all of my people, that his legacy will be what we define it to be. The issue of mass communications, mass media, the ability for us to talk to each other in terms of radio, television, print, email, the social networks. We're empowered now because of the advances in technology that we're no longer subject to the whims of an individual who is looking for sensational headlines and trying to out-sensationalize the other media outlet.
Right.
That's why they would rather put the negative terms in place when there are headlines referencing Marion Barry, because they sell, because people pay attention. What we have to do is to define him and his service to the community. His legacy needs to be what we decide it's going to be. If we talk about it, if we publish, whether we're doing social network or whether we're working through mass media such as your television show, if we talk about his true contributions, his true drive, what he was compelled to do for the underclass, someone with the underserved class, then that's what he will be remembered for. So I'm not willing to put my future in the hands of people who are merely looking to turn a profit in media. So I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to learn and get busy in terms of supporting and creating mass media, the ability to communicate within our community with information that we determine needs to be shared.
And Representative Hardaway, you've made an excellent point. We need to be, as a community, specifically in Africa, let me just speak as an African American community, in the framework of being able to define ourselves and not allow mass media, the majority, to define us.
Exactly.
And so to your point, you know, I'd like to leave this segment of the show defining Marion Barry as a civil rights warrior who advocated for his people, who loved his people, and who brought to this country a sense of pride because he was the first African American mayor of the District of Columbia. And he learned a great deal from Reverend Ben Hooks. He spent his growing up time and gathered his secondary education from Lemoyne-Owen College. And he was a son of a sharecropper.
Yes, and a servant leader.
A servant leader. A servant leader. All right. So when we come back, we're going to be discussing President Obama's speech. You know, he talked about immigration reform. He's going to move forward with an executive order, and there's been plenty of discussion about this. The Republicans are up in arms, but I think the president, Representative Hardaway, gave them an opportunity to do something about it, and they didn't do it. So I guess he said, I'm going to step up and do it. And we're going to have that discussion.
Do your job.
Do your job. When we come back, you're watching Dialogue with Deidre.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we we slowly changed our lives.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Did you know that every 34 seconds someone has a heart attack? Every 40 seconds someone has a stroke. But it doesn't have to be that way. Every day there's hope. Join me and the American Heart Association and get serious about your heart and your health. If you're doing nothing, do something. If you're doing something, do more. Find healthy living solutions from the American Heart Association's My Heart, My Life. It's that simple.
I'm Dominique Dawes. How do you start your day? I always start with a healthy breakfast. Whether you're practicing for a game or studying for a test, eating breakfast every day can improve your concentration and help you perform your best. Kids who eat a healthy breakfast have more energy to work hard and play hard. That's why you should check out your school's breakfast program. It's for everyone, so make sure you energize your day. Eat school breakfast.
Wow, Teller Brown is your drugstore, and your drugstore. Hey, we everyone's drugstore. And we're located at 3333 East Chevy Drive, 794-3690. All medical plans. We support supported living, assisted living. We do it all. And guess what? We even have a $4 plan. Hey, call to ask Dr. Brown about that. I gotta go because she's coming with those boots.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
And now, let's take some questions from the public.
Mr. Chairman, why do we keep cutting back on education?
Governor, you want to take that question?
Mr. Chairman, let's give this one to the Senate Majority Leader.
Since this matter was taken up in AB 3712, I think it best if I defer to the Assembly Majority Leader.
Actually, pursuant to Department of Education statutes, the State Secretary of Education would be more qualified to answer. Mr. Secretary.
My legal team has advised me not to comment at this time, so I'll humbly refer to our State Superintendent of Schools.
Pass. Definitely pass. Okay, County Superintendent.
Well, young lady, it's just too complicated.
Can you tell me who's responsible for my education?
That is a good question. Governor?
Repeat the question, please.
I don't see why I can't get an answer from
You're asking a lot of difficult questions.
Oh, she sure is.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the governor.
What is this?
Your 2 minutes are up!
Stop the circus. Contact your legislators at thisbudgetblows.com.
High school students drop out every school day. That's a line of desks more than 4 miles long. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step.
Welcome back to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. State Representative G.A. Hardaway is my guest today. A couple of things I want to share with you. I know we said we were going to talk about President Obama's speech, and we're going to talk about that, but we're going to deal with Ferguson first. We are waiting patiently to find out what the grand jury is going to come back with when it comes to will they indict or not Officer Darren Wilson for the shooting of Michael Brown, 18-year-old Michael Brown in Ferguson. Let's do one thing first. Let's talk about the myths and facts. There was an article, Representative Hardaway, in USA Today about the myths and facts surrounding Ferguson and the shooting of Mr. Brown. One myth is, we don't have any idea when the grand jury decision might happen. Well, we all know right now that they reconvene today. It's Monday, and people are saying that it may be today that a decision comes out of that grand jury. So that is a myth. We know what the fact is. A myth. Wilson stopped Brown because he was a suspect in a robbery. Myth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wilson did not know Brown was a suspect in a strong armed robbery that happened moments before the shooting. He didn't know. So Wilson stopped Brown and his friend for walking in the middle of the street.
Yeah, and being black.
Being an African-American young man walking in the middle of the street. Another myth. Autopsies tell us exactly what happened when Brown was shot. This was an interesting little piece of information. Actually, it doesn't. Brown struggled with Wilson inside his police car, they say, then reached for Wilson's weapon, they say. Brown's family and some witnesses say Wilson actually attacked Brown as he shot Brown as he raised his hands to surrender. Multiple pathologists say the autopsy performed by the St. Louis County Medical Examiner and the pathologist hired by Brown's family could not support either version. That's the fact. Pathologists say forensic science alone can't determine whether Wilson justifiably shot the teen. Judy Melnick, a forensic pathologist based in California, says she was quoted out of context in a St. Louis Post-Dispatch story that said she thought the St. Louis County Medical Examiner's autopsy of Brown supported Wilson's claim that Brown was reaching for his gun. Melnick and others say crucial missing information, including blood-splattered evidence, the number and location of bullet casings, the height of the officer's weapon, and other ballistic information must be factored in to determine what happened. Myth. Ferguson is plagued by violent protests. The city is mainly calm as residents wait for the grand jury decision. Protesters are not in the streets every night. Missouri Governor Jay Nixon said he would call in the National Guard only if unrest makes it necessary. Okay? Myth. The grand jury is deciding whether or not Wilson was justified in the fatal shooting. The fact is, legal experts stress the grand jury is not weighing whether Wilson was justified in shooting Brown. They are not making a decision on Officer Wilson's guilt, said Peter Joy, a criminal defense attorney and law professor at Washington University in St. Louis. The jury is simply weighing if there is probable cause that a crime was committed.
Whether to move forward.
Whether to move forward. Okay? Myth. Wilson has been fired. I just read somewhere that he got married over the weekend. Fact. Wilson has been on paid administrative leave since the shooting. So he's sitting at home on administrative leave while this grand jury take, and that's the legal process. Okay? Ferguson Police Chief Tom Jackson told KSDK that if the grand jury does not indict Wilson, he will immediately return to active duty. Wilson's assignment has yet to be determined. However, Jackson said if the grand jury does return an indictment, Officer Wilson will most likely be fired. Jackson says he has not had any contact with Wilson, and it is unclear whether he would want to return to the police force. But I do know, I was reading some of the web articles, and it has been brought to my attention that Mr. Wilson is meeting with the anchors of a lot of the major networks now, fishing his story around.
Well, when I think about that situation, and I think about what Memphis and Shelby County and the great state of Tennessee has on its plate, sometimes I'm not sure whether we have the time, whether we have the resources to put as much into Missouri, St. Louis County, as we do. We've got more than our fair share of situations here that need the full attention, not only of leadership, but of the community. I've had the occasion within the past few months to talk with some of my state representatives and state senators from that area, and I agree with your analysis that there's a whole lot of hype going on about the area, about Ferguson, that just doesn't seem to be true. The newspapers and the cable networks and the national broadcasts want to paint a picture rather of a community that's under siege.
Right.
That the governor is playing right into it when he talks about the potential violence rising to the level to where he needs to call out the National Guard. I would think that if you keep teasing the tiger, at some point he will pounce.
Right.
And I see no reason for him or some of the other entities to be, and especially the media, to seem to be fishing for people who will come in and create violence and create disorder. I'm talking to leadership there, elected officials, community leaders, and residents, and I'm not hearing all this, well, we can't wait until they have the verdict and we hope it goes bad, we're going to burn something down. I'm not hearing that. I'm only hearing the accusations coming through the media and coming from elected officials who seem to be in the mood to please give me a ride so I can try out my new weaponry, or give me a ride so I can make a case for my election to the next highest office. I'm disappointed in the way that the media has handled that situation. I'm appreciative of the fact that we have calmer heads out of D.C., our president and our Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, that have spoken to the need for us to wait, see what the results are from the grand jury, respect the process, and then to proceed to the next step, no matter which way the verdict, not the verdict, but the rendering the findings of the grand jury should come down, that we have ourselves prepared. Ourselves would be Ferguson,
exactly,
to move to the next step. And I think that Memphis rioting or creating any type of disorder because of what's happening in Ferguson, I think that's far-fetched. I would not doubt that we always have one or two knuckleheads who are looking for a chance to create some criminal activity to take advantage of a situation. But I think overwhelmingly, most people in Shelby County and Memphis feel that we have other means of recourse when we feel that we've been wrong, that the system has not done us right, at whether it's the initial stage where law enforcement encounters a citizen in the field, or whether it's during the prosecution or during the trial or in sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like we have recourse. We have people in power that we can go to and seek to get justice. And when we feel like it's not working locally, we know how to go to court. We know how to seek other means of redress, whether it's state or whether it's federal. We know that we have a system that we can use because we have representation, diversity within that system. Not the way it should be.
Right.
But it's close enough to where we can feel some comfort that we're getting a fair shake.
You have police director for the city of Memphis, Tony Armstrong. You have the chairman of the NAACP, Memphis branch, Keith Norman, national NAACP, calling for calm, specifically in Memphis. And if you want to protest, make sure you get a permit. I'm on the executive committee of the NAACP Memphis branch. I was there yesterday for the news conference. And some of the feedback that I'm reading on social media deals with the fact that a lot of people feel like the NAACP is disengaged. That if anybody needs to have a prayer vigil or protest, an orderly protest, then the NAACP should be at the forefront of that. I just think that we need to watch what's going on in Ferguson, pray for the people of Ferguson, and monitor what's going on and make sure that Memphis and Shelby County is taken care of.
I can support individuals wanting to support Ferguson.
Exactly.
But I would encourage you to look around and look behind you and in front of and each side, and you'll find there's more than enough cause for you to be involved in right here in Memphis, Shelby County. Or if you're not satisfied, you can move to one of the contiguous counties, whether it's Haywood or Fayette or Lauderdale or Tipton, or you can move over to West Memphis. You can find things right here at home that demand and require your attention. So it's fine to support what's going on in Ferguson, but let's not lose focus that we have issues right here at home that we need to concentrate our energies and devote our skill sets to.
Before we leave this topic, Representative Hardaway, I want to just bring to your attention, I was watching the press yesterday, one of my favorite Sunday programs. I like to see what the politicos are talking about and the news pundits. And they had Michael Eric Dyson on, and he's a professor, I want to say at Georgetown, and they also had the former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, on, and there were fireworks. Let me read some of this, and I just want to see what your reaction is to it. Former Mayor Rudy Giuliani caused a firestorm of controversy Sunday when he questioned why people protest the fatal police shooting of Michael Brown, but not black-on-black crime. The heated argument arose on NBC's Meet the Press during a discussion of why some police forces do not reflect the communities of color that they patrol, as in the case of Ferguson, Missouri, where protesters and authorities anxiously await, of course, the grand jury decision on whether to indict Officer Darren Wilson for shooting Brown. Why don't, and this is a direct quote from former Mayor Giuliani, why don't you cut it down? Why don't you cut it down so many white police officers don't have to be in black areas? Giuliani shouted during the Sunday morning talk show. The white police officers wouldn't be there if you weren't killing each other. If it were very disappointing that you're not talking about the fact that, no, he said he finds it very disappointing that they're not talking about the fact that 93% of the blacks in America are killed by other blacks. That didn't sit well, of course, with Georgetown professor and commentator Michael Eric Dyson, who became so infuriated he accused Giuliani of exhibiting the defensive mechanism of white supremacy. And what Dyson said, and this is a direct quote, "Black people who kill black people go to jail. White people who are policemen who kill black people do not go to jail." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that from what you've read, Giuliani is just exposed to the world the conversation and the attitudes that go with that good old boy network in those closed rooms that we aren't in when they're determining public policy. Some of that public policy deals with public safety. It deals with social and economic justice issues. And I don't know that we can blame him for thinking that way, because that's the way his group thinks. That's why we have such a thing as institutional racism. And that's what he was espousing. That attitude that, look, y'all need to have all this trouble brought down on you because you just won't act right no matter what we tell you. Now, when we look at the underlying causes of most criminal activity, I think we can trace it either to lack of educational opportunities or lack of jobs and economics. So to look at the symptoms and say, well, because y'all act like that we're entitled to come in with violence to cure the symptoms. It's a combination of ignorance and arrogance. The insensitivity is just so glaring. If Giuliani wants to address the real problem, then he will look at the causes. And I will say again that it speaks to lack of education, lack of jobs and economic opportunities. I've never yet met anyone in the years I've been on this earth who came to me and said, I'm in jail because I woke up this morning and decided I wanted to go away for 50 years. Or I'm in jail and on death row because I woke up one morning and decided I just want to be on death row. I haven't met that individual. The individuals that I have encountered who are in the system or those who are ex-offenders were caught up in the justice system because they didn't have other options available to them. Now, if we're going to make any kind of dent, not only in what's happening in Ferguson, that the symptoms have come out on what's happening in Ferguson in a social and economic and an educational environment. That has all been blown up and boiling over, but it's not merely the fact that you had young Brown killed, but it's all of these underlying causes that have caused the symptoms to be displayed in Ferguson. In Memphis, in Shelby County, we have one of the worst poverty rates ever. And yet we consistently find that we have public policy and public attitudes that seem to blame poor people for being poor. And blame those who are victimized by crime for the crime.
And Representative Hardaway, the divide continues to grow. So as community leaders, you know, we got to figure out what's going to be the strategy. We know what the solution is, but how do we get there? The solution is fix our education system and bring opportunities for economic development, jobs to this community. How do we move that along?
Well, I think that the number one thing that we need to do as elected officials that represent communities of color, we need a plan. We need to have a master plan, a strategy, and it's so simple that it could be an exit strategy from the downturn, the economic downturn, that great recession that we've gone through, that people of color are still recovering from. The lag time between when the majority population recovers from economic stress compared to when communities of color in general recover is years, sometimes decades. we don't have that immediate access to capital after we have lost businesses, after we've lost homes.
That's true.
And have become mired in the mess that's left behind, financial mess. We don't have that immediate access to further credit and further capital in spite of what has occurred. So we need a strategy so we can access those means of rebuilding our community. We've got to be able to continue to purchase real estate. We've got to be able to continue to start and invest and grow businesses. You can't do that without capital. You can't do that without money. So the same way that the other community has forgiven those who were caught up and suffered losses in spite of their best efforts. And I say those in spite of their best efforts, I'm talking about homeowners who had variable rate loans that increased to astronomical numbers that they couldn't take their whole check and pay that house note. I'm talking about businesses that got caught up in these high interest rate short-term loans that got called on them, or were doing business in communities that were suffering through the economic downturn. So they had good business models, they had good business sense, good business history, and yet they're still locked out because they don't have the forgiveness that the other community has in terms of, here's your credit, we know it wasn't your business acumen that got you in this fix, so we're going to give you another chance. We've got to have a strategy to access that capital, to access further opportunities, not just in government, but in the private sector. Those who talk the good game, Giuliani included, who have access to the private market. We need that access. We need to be able to go to FedEx and to IP and to AutoZone as businessmen and women and say, we want to compete for these contracts. We don't want stuff pieced off and piecemeal to us to satisfy
And we're not asking anybody to give us anything.
No, we're competitive.
Exactly.
But we have to have access to the same raw resources that everybody else has. And it's that good old boy network relationships that block us out from that capital, because they don't want competition, that blocks us out from being able to fairly compete for contracts, because they don't want that competition. This world is built on relationships, Deidre. And we don't have the relationships because we don't live in those communities, but we should have relationships. And the only way we're going to have them, somebody over there has got to have enough courage to stand up, come get us and bring us in. We love having y'all in our churches. We love having you come and to our receptions and come and say hello to us at our schools and birthday parties. But we need access to your community sometimes. We want to know who your children are. We want to know who your pastors are. We want to know the people you go to church with, the people that you have community events with. We need as much access to your community as you have to our community. When you do that, I'll start believing those who say they really believe diversity counts, diversity matters. But until I see those opportunities opened up for communities of color and women, then I'm not believing anything you tell me.
You've heard it, State Representative G.A. Hardaway. Now, when we come back, and I think that's an excellent segue, we're going to be talking about immigration reform. You're watching Dialogue with Deidre.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed our lives.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Wow, Teller Brown is your drugstore, and your drugstore. Hey, we everyone's drugstore. And we're located at 3333 East Chevy Drive, 794-3690. All medical plans. We support supported living, assisted living. We do it all. And guess what? We even have a $4 plan. Hey, call and ask Dr. Brown about that. I gotta go because she's coming with those boots.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
My fellow Americans, tonight I'd like to talk with you about immigration. For more than 200 years, our tradition of welcoming immigrants from around the world has given us a tremendous advantage over other nations. It's kept us youthful, dynamic, and entrepreneurial. It has shaped our character as a people with limitless possibilities. People not trapped by our past, but able to remake ourselves as we choose. But today, our immigration system is broken, and everybody knows it. Families who enter our country the right way and play by the rules watch others flout the rules. Business owners who offer their workers good wages and benefits see the competition exploit undocumented immigrants by paying them far less. All of us take offense to anyone who reaps the rewards of living in America without taking on the responsibilities of living in America. And undocumented immigrants who desperately want to embrace those responsibilities see little option but to remain in the shadows or risk their families being torn apart. It's been this way for decades. And for decades, we haven't done much about it. When I took office, I committed to fixing this broken immigration system. And I began by doing what I could to secure our borders. Today, we have more agents and technology deployed to secure our southern border than at any time in our history. And over the past 6 years, illegal border crossings have been cut by more than half. Although this summer there was a brief spike in unaccompanied children being apprehended at our border, the number of such children is now actually lower than it's been in nearly 2 years. Overall, the number of people trying to cross our border illegally is at its lowest level since the 1970s. Those are the facts. Meanwhile, I worked with Congress on a comprehensive fix. And last year, 68 Democrats, Republicans, and independents came together to pass a bipartisan bill in the Senate. It wasn't perfect. It was a compromise. But it reflected common sense. It would have doubled the number of Border Patrol agents while giving undocumented immigrants a pathway to citizenship if they paid a fine, started paying their taxes, and went to the back of the line. And independent experts said that it would help grow our economy and shrink our deficits. Had the House of Representatives allowed that kind of bill a simple yes or no vote, it would have passed with support from both parties, and today it would be the law. But for a year and a half now, Republican leaders in the House have refused to allow that simple vote. Now, I continue to believe that the best way to solve this problem is by working together to pass that kind of common sense law. But until that happens, there are actions I have the legal authority to take as president, the same kinds of actions taken by Democratic and Republican presidents before me, that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just. Tonight, I'm announcing those actions. First, we'll build on our progress.
Oh, we're back on. So you just heard the President of the United States, and that was his immigration speech that he gave on Thursday night. And there are three things that he said that he wanted to come out of his executive order, and here are the three things. First, we'll build on our progress at the border with additional resources for our law enforcement personnel so they can stem the flow of illegal crossings and speed the return of those who do cross over. Second, he wants to make it easier and faster for high-skilled immigrants, graduates, and entrepreneurs to stay and contribute to our economy, so as many business people have proposed to him. And then third, he'd like to take steps to deal responsibly with the millions of undocumented immigrants who already live in this country. State Representative Hardaway, what do you think about what President Obama proposed?
I think it's common sense. I think you've got 11 million or so individuals who are within the boundaries of the United States right now that are undocumented illegal aliens or illegal immigrants, depending on the terminology you want to use. So the very first thing to bringing order is to find out who's who, where are you, what can you do in terms of skill sets, in terms of ability, education, etc., in terms of your history, what have you done, so we can sort out those who are of a nature that they present a danger to America and the citizens of within America, and send them back where they came from, or find something else to do with them and keep them off the streets. So we want to be able to separate the criminals from those individuals who ought to have a fair shake at either maintaining a ongoing working relationship within America, or be put on a path to citizenship. So he didn't really address the citizenship issue to any great degree. But he did address whether you would be here and have an opportunity to present yourself as a tax-paying, law-abiding citizen. And the categories that he spoke to, whether it's the parents of a child that's was born in America, or through some other means an American citizen, or the dreamers, those who came here as children. He spoke to people who have already integrated and immersed themselves into the American way of life, into the very fabric of America. 11 million, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
And when you add in their extended families, their networks, those associates, that's a lot of people. That's what's keeping America on the course it's on now. That's what's driving our economic development. That's, in some respects, that's what's allowing us to have the type of advances that we have in technology. We have lawyers, we have scientists, we have teachers, we have a variety of experts who are here without the legal means of work and paying taxes. So we've got to be able to bring them into the fold of law-abiding, productive, tax-paying Americans. And I think what he did makes sense, and it only forces Congress to do their job.
And that's what I wanted to bring up, too. I mean, I think you have some members of Congress who are saying that, he's just letting everybody in. He wants the criminals to stay. He's made it very clear that if you are here and you are, a murderer or a rapist, they're going to find you and they're going to deport you because they don't want you here.
Right.
Okay? And so, but what really is astounding to me is the fact that you have this Congress, and even the new Congress that's coming in, they're talking to. I think the Attorney General for Texas who's talking about suing President Obama for his actions. I mean, he has dealt with this Congress for years trying to get them to move on immigration reform. And I guess once he saw that it probably wasn't going to happen under his presidency, and he had the power of an executive order, he decided to make that move. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything is right with it, because what he has put forward as an executive order can be reflected in public policy by the Congress if they choose to pass a bill. If they want to tweak it, modify it, they can do that by passing a bill. At some point, they need to quit playing the American voter for stupid. If we don't realize that an executive order is only going to be effective as long as Congress allows it to be. If they choose to pass a bill within that 3-year period that overrides some section or supports some section of that executive order, that's the way the law will go. But for them to act like all of a sudden the president has taken, I think some have accused him of being an imperialist, of being an emperor,
and that he thinks he's king. But this is something that all the other Republican presidents, all the other Democratic presidents have done some form of executive order dealing with illegal immigration over the past 50 years. So for 5 decades, we've had executive orders dealing with immigration. Now all of a sudden, you've got the president who happens to look like me. I'm not afraid to say it. We've got some people sitting in Congress, and including the old boy that said, "You lie," that wouldn't have said that to another president
that looked like him.
So let's call it for what it is. You've got some good people in Congress that disagree based upon the ideology that they happen to espouse. But you've got some other folk that it wouldn't matter if President Obama was a Republican and a Tea Partier, they would still hate him. So I don't think he needs to be concerned about trying to satisfy a goodwill relationship with them. He needs to do what's in the best interest of the people who live in the United States of America, and part of that means bringing some order to the 11 million or so illegal immigrants who are within our borders, and to creating a more sound border so that those who don't come in legally can't get in. He's done both of those. He's addressed it.
He sure
and
has.
We ought to be grateful to him for having the courage to stand up to the obstructionists, and they prove themselves to be obstructionists. And I'm talking about my Republican colleagues in Congress. They prove themselves to be obstructionists time and time again. Now when the president says, "I'm not going to let you obstruct me in doing what I can do as a chief executive for the country," and he did it. And he said, if you don't like it, pass a bill.
He sure said it.
And that's the American way. Anytime you don't like public policy,
you can do something
about
it.
As a legislator, you can do something about it. It's called passing a bill.
Well, I ask our viewers to comment on our Facebook page if they had some comments about the president's speech. And Paula Payton had this comment. Regarding the executive order, I think it's great that we are focusing on deporting felons, not families. Unless you are entirely Native American, you have no right to complain about immigrants, period. The thing that bothers me most about the typical Republican argument against immigration reform is the assimilation portion. The idea that America has one overarching religion or belief or culture goes completely against everything our founding fathers put into our Constitution. This country is a melting pot of different cultures and ideas, and none of them are any more American than the rest. For example, the argument that says this is America, speak English, is flawed on so many levels. Just the fact that our most common language was literally taken from another country after people immigrated here.
Well said.
Well said, is enough to
accurate.
make it illogical, said Miss Paula Payton. Thank you, Paula, for sending that comment in. That's something else.
And that speaks to this distorted sense of patriotism that seems to come from some of the radicals, that it's our job to keep the American citizenry from being set upon by any more immigrants. We don't want you here. Everybody in America is here, and we're not taking any more immigrants. That's generally the sense of what has risen from some of the more radical circles, that they're the only Americans and they plan to keep it that way. I think if we look at the history and we think about how America was built.
Exactly. We're all immigrants.
America was populated.
Right.
Yeah.
Or descendants from.
Descendants from. And some of us came voluntarily as immigrants. Some of us did not volunteer to get on that ship.
But we're here.
But
and
we're here.
And we've arrived.
So the question is, why are we suddenly so holier than thou that we can ignore the opportunities offered under our Constitution now, that we live under every day, for people to come, to be embraced by America, and to become a part of this melting pot or patchwork or quilt or whatever you want to call it. There's a certain amount of prejudice that exists, and we see it played out every day since we've had the 44th President of the United States.
Well, in an upcoming show of Dialogue with Deidre, we've invited Latino Memphis to come in. We want to know what the Latino community's perspective is on the President's executive order. So I think it's December 3rd we'll have representatives from Latino Memphis in.
Excellent. I'll be watching.
That'll be great. And I want to thank you so much, State Representative G.A. Hardaway. We've had you on the show before, and your comments are always thoughtful, reflective, and appreciated.
And I just want some people to be uncomfortable when I leave.
And
I
they
don't
will.
want you mad, but I want you uncomfortable.
No, and you want them to think. You want them to think and act in
That's
some
it.
positive form or fashion. I think that's important.
Yeah, in the best interests of America.
Exactly. I think that's important. And so I appreciate you being on, and congratulations on your reelection. We've not had you on since you've been reelected.
Well, thank you. I've had the chance to observe you in action, but never on this side of the camera, so I'm happy to be here. I think that the past election has revealed some cracks, shall we say, in the dike that Democrats need to repair. I think that we need to engage those people who are impacted the most by public policy decisions, women, communities of color, young people. I think all of these subgroups need to recognize that unless you participate in the election, somebody else is running your life. Someone else is making decisions for you. You cannot ignore an election and not your passiveness actually cast a vote for someone.
That's right.
And if that person wins, then you get what your hand calls for. No more, no less. So you need to be active in politics.
Well, we're trying to engage them, and so I think that's important. I think the more that we talk about it, and the more that I think some people just need to feel it. And I'm thinking over the next 4 years or so, they'll feel it.
I think you're correct. I think it comes back to what we talked about earlier, that people need information. They need knowledge. And if they get that information in between the elections, they'll find a reason to vote instead of an excuse not to vote.
Exactly. Representative Hardaway, thank you so much for being on Dialogue with Deidre.
Thank you, Deidre.
And thank you so much for watching. We'll be back on Wednesday, and we appreciate you watching, and I'm sure we'll have a great show. Have a good day.
Feels good. Since the moment I came in, my name's been synonymous with greatness. People stare at me like I'm climbing from a spaceship. Live City see me pal around with basics, speeding through the metro and all the towns adjacent. Truly yours.
Our children are in need. That is what motivated me to start this foundation. I am thankful for the support of icons like Vassar Lewis, and for young brothers like Jonathan Armstrong, who helped to make all of this happen. A fellow Harvard Law grad, he is known in most circles as a mover and a shaker. Jonathan.
Thanks for having me, everybody. On the ladder of success, failure is the rung before growth. Do not fear it, face it, and endure. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining me here today. It's been such an amazing event.
My pleasure.
Hey. Jay, you remember Farrah, right? You met her last year at the Montreux Jazz Festival.
Farrah Mays?
He used to work for my dad.
Yes, good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
How is he?
He's great. He was just asking about you.
Really?
We're going to Cape Town this summer. You should come.
Let me give you my information. 212-414.
I have Philip's office on the line for you.
An excuse me would be appropriate.
My apologies.
Oh, you've definitely grown up. That's fab.
Excuse me. I have to take this. I'll be right back.
Guys, excuse me. I have to make an important phone call. Good to see you.
You too.
Take care. Business. All right, you'll be here, right, D?
I'll be mingling.
All right, take care.
Excuse me.
Lauren Hill, D'Angelo, nothing even matters. 99 after the winter ball. Lakeshore Drive. My car ran out of gas, and we had to walk to the lake, and we slept on the rocks until my mama got there.
Okay, so what about this one?
See, I'm gonna need that one again, because my concentration was a little messed up. Can you do it again for me? Definitely Jay-Z, Big Pimpin'. No, let me explain. I got you those after your probate. Last week I rolled over and you weren't there.
Why do you not think so far ahead? 'Cause I've been thinking about forever. Don't fall back 'cause you made a mistake. I know they talk like you'll never escape, but they don't know you're so right with me, babe. 'Cause you could be
Mr. Lewis, Harper Brooks, Brooks Creative Consulting, and